Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Head, a Star Wars show. So, The Bad Batch premieres next week on May the 4th. The annual Star Wars holiday, May the 4th be with you. And of course, there's more updates. So right after this, we're going to give you an update on the cast list. We're going to go through it, we're going to talk about it, and we're going to see how you guys feel about it. Because remember, you can chat live. It's all happening right now.
You're listening to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show. So, you got to be excited about the Bad Batch coming next week.
Yeah, man, we've been hearing a lot about it. You know, I remember like late last year, we kept trying to figure out like when they were actually going to release it because they kept kind of pushing it back. Originally, it was supposed to come in January. Then they were saying like maybe March. So now it's official that May the 4th.
Yeah, it's true because they were even talking about like maybe doing it at the end of April or something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I mean, it's going to be really cool because I was sort of curious about some of the cast. I mean, I know that they had a lot of them that were announced, and of course, we knew that some of them were going to be returning from the Clone Wars series naturally.
Right.
But you know, it really makes me wonder what they're going to do, because when they started announcing all these different characters like Fennec Shan and all these other people, it was like, I don't know, I got the feeling like there was going to be more to this show than what I originally thought, just based on the characters that they were announcing. And I started thinking to myself, like, you know what? I'm wondering now who's going to play these people.
Yeah, I mean, there's actually something else that kind of came up. Like we said, we're talking about the cast, but there's also things of people that said that people who should be in the Bad Batch, you know, because there's the official cast that we know so far, but then we don't know what other surprises may be coming up. And people have already kind of put out like, okay, well, given the time period, these people should still be around. And we should see them.
Exactly. All right, well, you ready to get into it?
Hey, let's go.
All right, let's do it. All right, so the Bad Batch. It's kind of fun to say that.
I know, right? It has a hilarious kind of.
There's like exactly. I almost feel like I'm saying something, you know, like kind of naughty or something.
Exactly.
But yeah, man. First of all, I guess what we should do before we actually switch to the screen and, you know, show people exactly, because we got this. Where did this whole thing come from? Was it Screen Rant? Was it Cinema Blend? I'm trying to remember.
Oh, Cinema Blend. Yeah, Cinema Blend, and then there's been other people who kind of reported on it, but mainly Cinema Blend has the most information on it. And for those of you who aren't aware, the Bad Batch kind of extends from the Clone Wars animated series. They're pretty much versions of Jango Fett, of course, but they kind of are. They're not exactly clones like the rest of them as we kind of know them. They all kind of have this kind of special ability, so to speak. So one's like really technical. The other one's kind of like this big, you know, this bruiser guy. And then you got another one who's like a tracker/hunter. He's kind of the leader. And so you kind of have these kind of misfits. They're kind of like the A-Team, if you guys are familiar with the 80s television show. And they're called Clone 99. And they're kind of just like this elite kind of group of them. They're almost like mercenaries. And, you know, they kind of go out and do their thing. Now, we originally saw them in the Clone Wars, and they were on the side of the Republic. But, of course, now, at this juncture, the Republic has turned into the Galactic Empire. So now they work for the Empire, presumably, at least initially. So we don't know if they're going to stay with the Empire or if they're going to switch and kind of defect and kind of do their own thing. So that's kind of where we are, at least at the onset of the show.
Yeah, and I really wasn't looking forward to this show when it was first announced.
Me either.
In fact, I was thinking, why are they even doing this? I was hoping that Filoni would either do something like a sequel to Rebels or maybe, you know, something that was a little bit different. But I have to say that the more that I started getting into reading what it was going to be about and just the overall tone of the thing and, you know, the setting and all that stuff, I started really thinking about it, because you never really see what happens to these clones. Like you said, I mean, they were basically the Republic, then they become the Galactic Empire. Technically, they're still the legitimate government. They're just doing some pretty bad things, but to a lot of people, they're not even aware of this. And it's they're bringing in more humans, and they're phasing out the clones, and they're bringing in stormtroopers. So the first question becomes, what are the clone troopers basically feeling about all this? But even going beyond that, as you pointed out, it's like you have these clones that are kind of on the outskirts of even their whole thing, right? They're kind of on the fringes. They're not quite the obedient, regular clone soldiers that we've come to know.
Right.
You know, they're a little bit more renegade and
Oh, yeah, definitely.
kind of like their own thing. Kind of like you pointed out, they're sort of like the A-team of the clone troopers, right? They don't quite fit in. So they didn't even fit into the whole clone thing. So imagine what they must be feeling now. They're seeing things, and being that they're on the outside, I have a feeling that these guys are probably going to get a sense that there's something not quite right about the Empire.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm really looking forward to, honestly, more than anything, and I think this is kind of a cool, slick way of giving us a window into the Empire, is through these clones. So we see, you know, of course, at the end of Revenge of the Sith, you know, everything kind of turns into the Galactic Empire, and so we never see how things kind of progress right after that. You know, so Vader, of course, now is in the suit. So Anakin Skywalker definitely is completely gone at this point. And so now you have the Empire where Palpatine is kind of ruling once again. But, okay, do we see him kind of step further back into the shadows again? What's Tarkin doing? What's the whole game plan now? You see what I'm saying? Like, and I think this is where you can kind of see what happens, or how we get to episode 4 through these particular clones, because now we get to see, like, oh, okay, now we're seeing the establishment of this new government, where it was once kind of a peaceful thing. Now it becomes tyrannical, and now we kind of see how that shift happens and who's affected by that.
Well, and it's like you said, you know, we basically see it being created in episode 3, right? And then it's like in episode 4, it's well underway, but you never really see how the whole thing formed and how it was put together, as far as, okay, now that Palpatine has his power, now what? I mean, we were starting to see this in the comics. In fact, I just got through reading the latest Darth Vader comic. It's really cool because now, after he's been put through all these tests, now he wants vengeance on Palpatine himself. So he actually goes to Exegol to seek his revenge on Palpatine. He's basically going there to kill him. And there was like this big, I don't know if it was the Eye of Webbish Gog or not, but it was it was this big creature, giant creature. You know, Vader's like this big on the thing. And he basically comes in, lightsaber blazing. You know, he gets onto Exegol. He's like riding this thing, and he's basically like going to try to kill Palpatine. And of course, Palpatine is just kind of like, you know, you really?
Oh, you're a little too young.
So, I mean, naturally, he just dispatches this giant monster like that, which, of course, brings me back to that one Godzilla-ish episode of the Clone Wars. And that was the thing. It was like he was never really in any danger, you know? And it's like, but he couldn't show off like that, though. He couldn't just dispatch this thing, so he had to pretend to be helpless. And that just kind of reminded me when I was reading this comic about, you know, you go back, and it's like Palpatine actually has to pretend that he's helpless, and he's not.
Right.
So Vader basically watches this thing destroyed. He keeps trying to kill Palpatine. Palpatine's just like, dude, it's not going to happen, basically, you know? And but the thing is, you're getting comics like this, and you're getting some books and everything that are telling you how things went from episode 3 to episode 4. But I think that doing it through the eyes of the Bad Batch is cool.
Yeah.
So what I would suggest, because I'm sure there's viewers out there that aren't quite sure about the Bad Batch, because if you think about it, unless you're a hardcore Clone Wars fan,
You have no idea who these guys
you
are.
really don't, because I mean they appeared in a couple of episodes. I think there was like one story arc called the Bad Batch in the Clone Wars, like around season 4 or something, or 3 maybe.
No, it was actually like the beginning of. Are you talking about their very first appearance?
Yes, you're thinking of the whole season 7. That's not what I'm talking about. That's
Okay.
actually the return of them.
Right.
And it did feature a couple of different characters because I think the original Bad Batch even had like Rex or somebody in it. But there was an original Bad Batch, and that's what the episode was called, at least one of them.
Right. Okay.
And it went through they had to go through those like...
They had to beat that one like test. It's almost like the Kobayashi Maru type thing.
Yes. And that was, I think, where they actually made their first appearance.
Yeah, you're right. Definitely.
And they were either featured or mentioned in some subsequent episodes, but it was actually season 7 of the Clone Wars where they were heavily featured.
Yeah.
And we were introduced. And what this new series is essentially a spin-off of the Clone Wars. And it's basically following these guys, like you pointed out in the opening of the show. I mean, it's basically, one's called Hunter, one's called Tech, I think. Crosshaired. Yeah, it's like... They're kind of like the A-Team. They all have like special abilities or skills.
Yeah.
And they basically got together, and they're kind of like these renegade sort of clone / almost mercenaries. And what they decided to do was make this whole series on them.
Yep. Let's see. Our usual suspects are here. Ronaldo and Mother Vance are here. They're saying their greetings to everyone. And then, of course, Mother Vance wants to know who are the Bad Batch. And
See?
Ronaldo comes in with a save. They are a special unit of Alter clone troopers. They take on very dangerous missions for the regular clones.
See, that's really nice. That's a great way to sum it up in one sentence.
Yep. That's why you got to have Ronaldo.
That's why you got to have Ronaldo. Because, and that's a good point, because they are kind of like special forces.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think, because at first, again, I wasn't really all that keen on seeing this.
Yeah.
It really wasn't my thing.
Well, apparently Ronaldo wanted something similar, because he says, I've always wanted a Republic Commando TV series. This is the closest thing, so I'm very excited. And then he also made mention of that the monster you were referring to in the comic. He said, the monster in that comic is one of the creepiest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, man. It really was. I mean, honestly, if I saw that thing coming at me,
yeah, you probably pass out or something.
I would totally freak out. And the fact that, Palpatine is just kind of just almost nonchalant about it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, they're like this big compared to the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, it's this tentacled thing with this giant, like, kind of mouth thing. I mean, it's pretty freaky. It sort of has that same creepiness as the Drangir in the High Republic comics.
Oh, okay. Well, I was actually kind of thinking about the what are those things from Force Awakens that Han was transporting?
Oh,
those
Dark something.
I thought there was like Wrath. I thought it was Raptor.
Right? Yeah, Wrath. I don't know. Ronaldo, I'm sure, will chat it in within like 40 seconds or something.
But Ronaldo also says, do you think we will see the Bad Batch executing Order 66?
I don't actually. Well, here's okay.
That depends if they have the chip.
Not only does it depend if they have the chip, it also depends on the time period that we're talking about here, because I'm not entirely sure, and I could be wrong about this, but I think that this is taking place sometime after Episode 3. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, Order 66 did go on for quite some time.
Yeah, it was kind of like a long-standing.
I mean, it wasn't like a one-and-done kind of thing. Like, oh, well, that was a good week. Now we can go on with whatever. I mean, yes, I do understand that Order 66 was kind of an ongoing thing. That's why you needed the Inquisitors. That's why you needed all this other stuff. But at the same time, I think a lot of times when we think of this, and Ronaldo, again, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but a lot of times when people in general are asking that question, they're really talking about the more immediacy of that order, right? They're talking about pretty much that window of time where that order was first executed. Mm-hmm. Even though some time passes and it goes from like this order that all the clones galaxy-wide are executing at once to more like, okay, here's a team led by Vader that's going to continue to do this. It's more like a policy at that point. Like, okay, run into Jedi? Yeah. So you Inquisitors,
sight, yeah,
you guys are kind of tasked with finding the rest of them. After that initial wiping out of the Jedi. Right. So
if there are any in hiding, which arguably they could be,
exactly,
find them and get rid of them.
Right, and this is why I'm thinking that I'm pretty sure that the Bad Batch, it's not like right after. I mean, I don't think it's too long after, but I think that it's a little bit of time. And who knows? They might surprise us in the pilot, and they might actually overlap episode 3, right?
Right.
Like I actually think it would be cool if they did that.
Yeah.
Where it's like, they get that little hologram Palpatine going, execute Order 66, and then they're like, okay. And like you said, do they even have the chip?
Yeah, because they're renegades anyway, and they already kind of run on there because they know that they don't follow orders. That's the whole thing. They really kind of do what they want to do. So I don't even think they would even do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, even though the chip does really kind of compel you, like it kind of overpowers because it was it Rex or was it Cody that was with Ahsoka that kind of like overpowered and ripped it out or whatever?
Oh, that was Rex.
Yeah. And if you remember, and he's not exactly a weak-minded clone, right? I mean, it took him everything he had, and at first he was kind of doing it.
Yeah.
And then she, snapped him out of it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if even the Bad Batch could necessarily overcome the power of that chip. I mean, Palpatine's no slouch. I'm sure and he's aware of the Bad Batch. He has to be, simply because Tarkin is so aware of them.
Right. Oh, Ronaldo also answered the question. They're called Rathars.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, getting into the Bad Batch a little bit deeper, this is an interesting time because, a lot of characters that we've heard about that might or that will actually appear in the series. So you already mentioned one, Tarkin. So the person who originally played Tarkin in the Clone Wars, who actually did the voice acting, I should say, is going to do it. He's returning. D. Bradley Baker, he's the one who's doing all of the actual clone voices, and he's done like just numerous voice work for just all types of shows. So he's actually helming that. And then let's see. Ming Na Wen is returning as a younger Fennec Shan. So if you remember Fennec Shan is from, we first see that character in The Mandalorian as the bounty hunter that kind of Boba Fett adopted in a way. And then, like I said, Steven Stanton is playing Admiral Tarkin. And I noticed that he's Admiral at this time. He's not Grand Marshal.
Yeah, that was cool. And here's one, Saw Gerrera.
Yeah.
This is one I was surprised.
Yeah.
Here, scroll back up a little bit because it's kind of cutting off his head. This is one that I was really kind of shocked to see, was to actually see Tarkin in there. Well, I mean, I wasn't shocked to see Tarkin, but I was shocked that Tarkin was going to be a big deal in this, and the same thing with Saw Gerrera.
See, Saw Gerrera, that's the one that kind of threw me, but Tarkin I could definitely see because with him being the military,
I guess, but I didn't think that. See, I thought maybe it was, and who knows, this could actually be the case. I thought it was going to be more like maybe he would make a couple of appearances or something, kind of like what he would always do on Rebels.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks like from the trailers that we've seen that he's actually going to be figuring prominently into this. Like he's almost a main character.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I definitely expected that because like I said, in the onset of the show, I believe this is what we're seeing, the onset of the Empire as we know, like that's leading up to 4. And like by the time we get to 4, he's the guy. I mean, he's running the Death Star.
Well, yeah. I mean, you do. So, you got a point. I mean, it's true.
Like you kind of almost have to kind of see that kind of, and even when we saw the at the end of Revenge of the Sith, you see Tarkin kind of standing there
with Vader,
and all them, kind of like, all right, overseeing everything, and so I can definitely understand why he would be there. But Saw Gerrera, that's the one that kind of was like, oh, okay,
yeah, and it's really cool that and he was the same guy that played him in the Clone Wars.
Yep,
which is cool. So it's good to see Saw Gerrera get some, get a little bit of love in that. But again, I just think that to see some of these people coming on board like Fennec Shan.
Mm-hmm.
Fennec Shan's another character that I really honestly wasn't sure we were going to see. And what it's showing me here is the fact that what they're trying to do from more like a broader canon type of a standpoint here is they're doing something that I've wanted them to do since George Lucas was running the thing. And that is, I want to see the continuity. Mm-hmm. I want to see this playing out in the animated series, the movies. Now we have the TV shows, right?
Right.
I was tired of the fact that you would read these really cool stories in what was the expanded universe, and then they wouldn't find their way. Sometimes they would. I know Lucas would cherry pick a little bit, and he brought in, Quinlan Vos and, stuff like that. But, he would, a lot of times it would either be some characters, but it would mostly be concepts. Like, he would take a concept, and then he would kind of Lucasize it. And, that would kind of be his little nod to making the fans happy by putting an expanded universe favorite in. But what I'm seeing now, and I'm really liking this, is the fact that they're actually taking full-blown story arcs and everything like that, and they're starting to
fill in the gaps.
Fill in the gaps, and they're also putting these things in, as you well know, because you've read enough of this stuff by now, where they're starting to really, like, something might start in a series and pick up in a book, or, they're really doing, like, these whole story arcs that go across a bunch of different medium. And the addition of Fennec Shan is a great example of that, because here's a character that we're introduced to. As far as I know, she was introduced in The Mandalorian. I don't remember her being mentioned. You guys, whether you're chatting live or you want to comment in, let us know if Fennec Shan actually appeared in anything else. It's possible that she might have been like a Clone Wars character that they actually made live action, but I don't think so, because they would have been making a big deal about that.
Yeah, just like when we saw, what's his name? From, he originally had the Boba Fett armor in The Mandalorian.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was in the book.
Yeah, he was in Aftermath.
He was in Aftermath, right.
Oh, my goodness.
I know, right?
I know, this is bad.
But that's the thing, though, because we're getting so many characters, because between High Republic and all these are like Fennec Shan and all these other new characters, it's kind of hard to kind of keep up and all the other books. But anywho, one of the other things is that a lot of people are speculating that these characters could be making an appearance in the Bad Batch as well, or they should be making an appearance, and that is, one is, of course, Ahsoka Tano. She should be making her appearance along with our favorite Sith Lord, Darth Vader himself.
Vader, yeah.
Now, this is what I really would have loved to see, because at this point, this is kind of, if you remember, like, this kind of reminds me of that Lords of the Sith period in time. So between that and 4, where I feel like, that's why he said he was having that conflict with Palpatine, and they would kind of go on these little missions, and they would get stuck together, and all of a sudden he realizes Palpatine duped him, and now he wants to kill him, and he's finding all this. So between this period, between right after 3 and before 4, he's finding out all this stuff. And so I really would love to see like what Vader's maturation has become, because remember, I've always brought this up. You see Anakin Skywalker, he's like kind of whiny, and he's, now granted, by Revenge of the Sith, that's kind of gone away for the most part. But then, like, you see him in episode 4, he was like, "Don't be so proud of this technological terror you have constructed." Like, when did you start talking like that?
Yeah, I know. It's kind of like, dude, you must have gotten some, vocabulary lessons, or somebody's taught you,
he's gotten into the whole political realm now, and all of a sudden, and even in Rogue One, he's like, there is no Death Star, he's like,
that was actually one of the funniest things, because the way that he was putting it, right, it was kind of, and you really weren't this is what was really cool to me about that scene. I'm glad you brought that up. You were not ever seeing Vader or Palpatine kind of like dance around, because this is a time where they still have to be a little bit kind of above board, like, okay, we're evil and we're going to take everything over. But we can't look like that right now. We still have to kind of look like, hey, we're the good government. We're, we destroyed the Jedi and they had this plot and we're still cool. So, yeah, now it's got to be, it was an explosion at a plant or something.
Mining colony.
Or a mining disaster, I mean, it's one of those things where they kind of have to, like, flub it. They got to kind of lie and
sweep things under the rug.
Right.
Nope, didn't happen.
Yeah, right. I mean, they can't, because by the time we see him in episode 4, I mean, like, probably like the third or fourth main scene. I mean, once you get off of Tatooine, right? Because they're always going back and forth between the Death Star and everything. And, it's great because, the minute that you start seeing these guys in any way, shape, or form, it's kind of like, yep, Republic's been swept away, we dissolved the Senate, but, like,
everything's gone. So.
Everything's gone. And at first you're thinking, like, well, I wonder what that was even like then.
Oh, what the heck are you even talking about?
That really, more accurately, that's about it. It's like, I don't even know what Senate. What was that on? All we saw was, like, Luke, man.
Yeah, it's like, okay, some robots came out and...
Right, we don't, were they? We don't know. So that's a good point. But what's funny is that during the time of the original trilogy and then a lot of the material that's been written around it, they've been firmly in control. It's basically be like, you know what? It's the Empire. We're in control. Kind of doesn't really matter. We could pretty much do whatever we want at this point. So it was really interesting to harken back to a time where they couldn't just be so overt about, their intentions and what they were doing, that they actually did have to make excuses and kind of lie and cover things up and do all that stuff. So, that was kind of fun to see.
Oh, yeah. That's why, that's one of my, like, that whole, and I totally wasn't even expecting that scene, honestly, with Vader. So just to see him have that whole conversation with Krennic was kind of, like, hilarious, because it's like you said, he's like, oh, there is no Death Star. It was this, and this is what happened. And, of course, Krennic is not, now he's not really understanding why we have to hide things, but because he's not ultimately responsible either.
Well, the other thing you got to look at, too, is that Krennic was kind of on board with what the Empire was trying to, his whole thing was basically like...
He's won his glory. That's
well,
it.
It's not even, there's that, but you also have to look at it like this. He's thinking the Empire's already the ultimate power. What are we hiding behind?
Exactly.
We're in control. There's nobody that can stop us. The Jedi are gone. What are we dancing around for? We could go in there right now with a ton of stormtroopers and obliterate the entire Senate, and it wouldn't even matter.
Right.
And the rebellion at that point hadn't been solidified and strong enough, at least to what it was actually the Battle of Scarif that they started realizing, like, oh, we do have a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, and once they realized what this whole weapon was, that's when it was like, okay. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, during this period where the Bad Batch is concerned, that's why I think this is cool, because I think we're really going to get a window into how all the political stuff. Remember, we talked about that, like the political dramas, and I think we're going to get a lot of that in this, because that's kind of how, they're mercenaries, and mercenaries are usually the ones who are trying to overthrow or knock down political governments and things like that. So I really think this is really going to be interesting. And thanks, Ronaldo. The name was Cobb Vanth.
Yeah. Cobb Vanth.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was like right there.
Yeah.
What's funny is I even read the book, it's like.
So, okay, we got Vader. They expected Vader to be making an appearance at some point, which totally makes sense. They also think Thrawn will actually be making an appearance.
Yeah, now that makes sense to me, because Thrawn was obviously around a lot during, the what would have been just before the original trilogy, because that's when Rebels takes place. Look at him. You got to feature this guy.
And it also kind of brings into context for people, because when the Mandalorian comes back, now you actually have like even more reference to.
Well, but again, it makes me wonder, though. It kind of makes me wonder, are they going to bring Thrawn back in the... well, let's face it. It's going to be live action, because Bad Batch is still an animated series. So even if they bring Thrawn into it, still an animated Thrawn. It's basically what we saw in Rebels.
Right.
But what I'm wondering, though, is that when the Mandalorian comes around again, are they going to introduce him there and then stick him in the Ahsoka series? Or I almost think that they're going to introduce him in the Ahsoka series. Only because she's the one that's looking for him. And obviously, there's something going on there that we don't know about.
Well, see, I think it's going to be more so introducing the Mandalorian than he's going to end up in the Ahsoka series, because if you put him in Mandalorian, you can kind of take. I mean, and in a way, maybe in a way, I can see him being in Mandalorian because I can see him wanting the dark saber, and he's all about historical facts and artifacts and things like that. And however, if you have Ahsoka who's looking for him, their whole thing is Ezra, and I think that if you bring Ezra into the Mandalorian now, that's going to detract from the Mandalorian. So I think he's better served in the Ahsoka thing, because that's who he's used to dealing with anyway. He was already dealing with Sabine and Ahsoka and Ezra and all the rest of the characters.
But there's one thing, though, that you had said before in previous shows that I think could mean that he could pop up, at least introduced in the Mandalorian, then ported over.
That part I agree with.
Well, it's because the implication that somebody's pulling oh man,
Moff Gideon's string.
Thank you. I can't believe I blanked on that one. Yeah, somebody's pulling Gideon strings. Like, I don't think he's the be all end all guy in charge.
Well, see, I think, and what could be cool is that if he actually is the character in both shows. Like, he's the main character on the Ahsoka series, and they're constantly dealing with that. However, he may pop up in the Mandalorian ever so often to, okay, hey, Gideon, Gideon may be like the main guy for the Mandalorian, because that seemed a little bit more compatible as hero villain is concerned. Mm-hmm. Whereas Thrawn seems like he's more compatible with Ahsoka, Ezra. So, but I can see if Thrawn is kind of the mastermind in both, but he's prominent in Ahsoka versus he might make appearances like, hey, Gideon, did you get this? I need this quickly because Ahsoka and the rest of them are, destroying this. Get me whatever I need.
No, I like that idea. I like the idea of him crossing over and bouncing back and forth, because to me, that's the next level.
I was just about to say, yeah.
I mean, now granted, really the Mandalorian is the only live action series they have. So, I mean, it's kind of unfair to even say this at this point because, for all we know, that could be the intent. Mm-hmm. And that could have even been the intent all along. But what I'm hoping is the end game here, when they have all these, particularly the series that are taking place at the same time. No, I don't expect some of these guys to, I don't expect Gideon to, appear in Obi-Wan or something.
Yeah, no.
But Thrawn could. Thrawn could. Gideon, maybe, depending on, because it's true. I mean, there's only maybe 10 or 15 years at the most.
Yeah, he's old enough.
He's old enough. I mean, he probably would have been Cadet Gideon at that point. But the point is, it's true. He could have definitely been the guy that was at least able to go from the Clone Wars, maybe not the Clone Wars era, but around Rebels and Episode 4 and all that, the original trilogy. He could actually bounce from that to the Mandalorian. Absolutely. But what I'm hoping, though, is the shows that take place around that. Rangers of the New Republic. Or I think it's just called Rangers of the Republic, actually.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Ahsoka, The Mandalorian. If he was just bouncing around between those shows, I think that would be sort of cool because, once again, and I think that this is the strength that we have when it comes to what they can do now, not just with the going from books and movies and all that, but even if you're just sticking with the TV shows themselves, they can actually put this whole cohesive thread together.
Right.
So it's basically giving it, so you get the feeling like you're basically reading parts of one big story, that all this stuff is going around the galaxy and things are not so compartmentalized, because that's the problem I've basically had the whole time. I think that one of the things that Star Wars has suffered from tremendously in the last 30, 40 years. And again, it's really more the nature of the fact that, you have all this time that's been building up. I mean, for the longest time, all we really had was the original trilogy. Then you had the prequels and you had the sequels, and you get some animated shows. You get, you get an increase of novels and comics and all this stuff. But again, I think the biggest thing here is that it all seemed compartmentalized to me.
Mm-hmm.
Even though things were taking place during the same period, it was almost like these isolated stories. It was almost like episodic TV versus what started to happen, like, say, in a show like 24 or any of the shows nowadays, where it's like there's definitely episodes, but it's part of a bigger story, though. It's like the story arc goes across the whole season.
Yeah, kind of like how Law and Order, like you'll see like the initial, like the bust or something like that, but then you might see a trial like in another show or something like that.
Yeah, right, exactly. When they do those crossover shows between two, and they'll have the characters appear in each other's shows. Yeah, that's the type of thing that will...
And DC is doing that heavily now with a lot of their content.
Yeah, and Marvel has been doing it too. And I mean, I think that that's just... And I think that that's something that they're picking up on. They're picking up on the fact that, look, when you're basically having all these franchises doing a certain thing and it's successful, something like Star Wars has just piles of material that they could do this with. I mean, it's not just see, in a thing like Harry Potter, I think they'd be more limited.
Right.
Not necessarily, and even that's doing some, you had the whole spin-off thing with the whole Fantastic Beasts and where to find them, and that whole thing. And I think that they were planning on doing like a sequelized thing. I think they did that even in the like a grown-up version of Harry Potter in a book or something. But it's a little bit more limited into what you can do as far as the content goes. But I think, though, that it's similar because you have J.K. Rowling, who was the creator and pretty much keeper of everything in that franchise. And up until, like 8 or 9 years ago, you had George Lucas, who was the sole creator and keeper of the Star Wars franchise. So I think from that standpoint, that's where there was a little bit of a disconnect, whereas he was saying, no, only my ideas are actually canon.
Right.
I mean, I'll let these other writers basically write professional fan fiction, but it's like my stories are... That was the one benefit that I think that Disney had on this whole thing. Is as many mistakes as they may have made, I think one of the biggest things that they did right was they said, you know what? We need to make everything count. We need to make all of this stuff matter, and it's not like, okay, these stories count and these stories don't. And I mean, that just confuses a fandom big time.
Right. Absolutely. Let's see. The next person is Kanan Jarrus.
Oh, yes. Now, what's interesting to me is the fact that, once again, a lot of times people are looking at him going, wait a minute, didn't he die? But everybody has to remember, I mean, spoiler alert, right? He dies in Rebels.
Right.
This is before Rebels. So, I mean, I'm thinking that they could do some really cool stuff. Because, again, if you guys haven't actually really gotten into Kanan Jarrus' story, it really starts, he's really introduced in the very first novel in the Disney Star Wars universe, and it was called A New Dawn. And that's where he meets Hera, and he was kind of like, very much like the Jedi Fallen Order character. He was more or less a Padawan, and Order 66 happens, and he's like trying desperately to, like, oh, what am I going to do, right? I mean, I can't really use my force powers or I'm going to go get killed. And then he kind of rejects it or whatever, and he's brought back slowly into it. So that story actually happens not too long after the Clone Wars. So honestly, the story of A New Dawn would actually pick up right here with the Bad Batch. So if they put Kanan in there, you're basically giving a New Dawn type story arc here.
Yeah.
And there's I bet you Ronaldo knows. I keep forgetting the guy's name, the main bad guy of A New Dawn. He was really cool. I think his name was Mr. something or No, Mr. Bones is he was in the Aftermath thing. He was basically the battle droid that they reprogrammed, and he was basically modeled after HK-47 or something from Knights of the Old Republic. No, this guy was really, really cool. He was actually one of the cooler bad guys, I think. Like, I'd like to see him in an animated or, some sort of a live action thing would just be super cool. But I'll even take, the, oh man, either animated, live action, a comic would be cool. Because the way they describe him is really interesting. But, he's just one of those guys that you could tell would actually be a really cool bad guy if they brought him in and had him did more stuff. Had him do more stuff.
Okay. Let's see. Next we have Hondo.
Now, Hondo, that's one of my favorite. It's funny. I just learned that there's like a Funko Pop of him. Hondo is like one of the coolest. I mean, he's another one of those guys, man. He was introduced in the Clone Wars, and he's become one of my favorite characters.
Oh, yeah. Like him, right? Hondo and Cat Bane are probably like the smaller characters, but yeah, those two.
They're more minor. They're kind of like the minor major characters of the Clone Wars, but, and what's cool about Hondo, see, what I think that they should have done for The Last Jedi is instead of Benicio del Toro's character, they should have had him play Hondo.
Oh, man, that would have been awesome.
Because if you think about it, you could have put Hondo in that situation, and it would have been just fine.
Absolutely.
I mean, it would have basically been intact.
I never thought about that, but that would have been perfect.
It just hit me. It just hit me just now. It's like I could totally imagine Hondo in that situation, in that role. And the fans would have gone nuts. Right?
Yep.
So,
Yeah, man. That would have been Now I'm mad because they didn't do it.
Yeah, see, now it's kind of like one of those things. It's like, oh, man.
Right. So the other person is everyone's lovable Grogu.
Yes. Formerly known as Baby Yoda.
Yes, the Padawan known as Baby Yoda.
Well, and this is another thing, too, that, and unfortunately, I wish I didn't have to do it. I think it was actually a week ago today that I had to do the solo show about The Mandalorian's going to be a different show next season. And I was really looking forward to doing that show with you because that I thought could have, it turned out cool anyway. And of course, the chat's always cool. I mean, Ronaldo was there to help me out. But one of the things that I think I brought up during that discussion was the fact that Grogu is going to be a big piece that's missing next season.
Definitely.
And so now that we've learned his origin, it's kind of like, he's been around since, before the Clone Wars, right?
Yeah.
So, what's he been doing in all this?
And who, maybe we get to find out who was actually, his master. And
right. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing, and again, I don't really want them to shoehorn a bunch of characters into this thing just because, why not? But again, if this is another thing that's going to go like 4 or 5 seasons, then yeah, you got room. I mean, I'd rather see that than like Space Whale story arcs. Sorry, yeah. Ronaldo. I know Ronaldo actually likes that storyline. And I don't hate it. I just think that it was filler. I thought it was actually a cool story, but I don't, once again, it was kind of like, I brought up 24 earlier. The same thing in 24. We see a whole episode or 2 of Kim running through the woods, right? And it's like, no, I want to get more to the meat of the actual storyline. Show me more of that. I don't need to see all this trivial stuff,
Getting chased by a cougar or something.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, and then finally we have Boba Fett.
Yeah, this is another one that I think could really benefit from having his story expanded a little bit. And I honestly don't think it's unreasonable to expect this because they're sort of warming us up for it. They got the Book of Boba Fett coming out. He obviously made his first post-Return of the Jedi appearance in any kind of a live-action thing in The Mandalorian. And, you know, it wasn't like he was in just one episode. I mean, he was featured kind of heavily.
Yep.
And I just think that it makes sense if they were to maybe give some more context to his story. Now, again, you guys have to remember, Boba Fett did appear pretty heavily in the Clone Wars show. I mean, I think there was 3 episodes. There were like 3 episodes at least that majorly featured him. One, I remember he was trying to get revenge on Mace Windu. You know, the other one was kind of how he hooked up with Aurra Singh and Bosk and all that. And then there was one that I think was a little bit later or something like that where I think they actually needed his help or something.
Yeah.
I don't quite remember, but you know what I'm talking about. It's like they had him pretty much prominent in that series.
Yeah, he was playing one of those. He was still trying to go after Mace Windu, but he was part of he tried to join the academy or something like that.
Oh, so right. And then he was, He had
to do the gun thing, but he was so good at it, and he was just popping everybody out of the sky.
Yeah, that was pretty funny, actually.
Yeah.
But, I mean, again, he's another guy, right, that they could give a little bit more context to, which will help them. You know, another thing, look, let's not kid ourselves here. This is a marketing thing, too, right? I mean, they're doing this because they have a limited series coming out about Boba Fett. So if they throw him in this thing, it's going to get people really excited for it because, you know, unless I'm wrong here, this is the only Star Wars we're going to get for about, 6 or 7 months. So I don't know exactly how long this episode or how long this thing's supposed to run.
Well, I don't know how many episodes they're going to have, but we do have run times on some of the episodes, though.
Oh, yeah, right. What is it?
So the first episode of The Bad Batch is supposed to be like 70 or 75 minutes.
Jeez.
Yeah. And then the rest of them, like I think 2 is supposed to be 30, and then I think the third one is 28 minutes.
Yeah, that's gonna be a lot. I mean, but they still didn't say like how many.
Not how many actual episodes.
Because the Clone Wars actually went like a full 22 episodes per season.
It went 7. They actually had 7 seasons.
And they had 7 seasons. 6 I think only had like 12 or something because they weren't really completed. But again, I mean, are we going to get 4 or 5 seasons of The Bad Batch with like 22 episodes apiece? We don't know yet.
Right. Let's go to the chats really quick.
Yeah, I know. They've been blowing up.
Ronaldo says, honestly, I'm surprised that no one is talking about Kanan Jarrus. Not even a Force Ghost. Not even as a Force Ghost, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I am and I'm not. I am and I'm not only because if you think about, really, only Ahsoka, if you're talking in-universe. If you're talking about in-universe, it makes sense because really nobody but Ahsoka that we knew about would even really know about him.
Yeah.
He didn't really seem like he was all that prominent in the original Jedi Order. He was just a Padawan.
Right.
He just ended up kind of in the role of a quasi-master, like almost like a pseudo-master to Ezra. But, we really don't know anything about him before or after. It's just kind of like he played a little bit of a role during Rebels with that particular group of people, but it wasn't like he went on and he died before anything significant could happen, like him joining the rebellion, for instance.
Right.
Now, if you're talking about out of universe, because that could also hold true too, right? Like nobody really talks about him that much. That kind of surprises me a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you don't have a whole. I mean, you just got to think about the people he kind of came in contact with. He kind of had a fine line, as far as what we know about him.
Well, and I mean, really, it was only Ahsoka that he was the only really truly prominent character that he came into contact with.
Right.
You know, well, in Maul.
Oh yeah.
So I mean,
he's not around to tell that story. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Mother Vansel says Baby Yoda is bad.
I'm assuming that means good. Oh wow, did she type Baby Yoga? Awesome.
Yeah. And then Ronaldo answers your question to the New Dawn question. I think the antagonist of the New Dawn is Count Vidian.
Yes, that's it. That's who it is. Count Vidian. Such a cool character.
Such a cool name too.
It is. And I mean, the way that he's described, I don't know if they have any like fan art on him. Look and see if they've got anything on him that we can show. Because he's such a cool looking character. And again, this kind of goes into the whole Kanan Jarrus story because he is one of those guys that the way he's, like I said, the way that he's described is really interesting. He's like kind of half machine and half, he kind of has that Vader thing going, but he's just like, the way that he's described, he almost sounds like Destro from G.I. Joe. Yeah. Yeah. Or, like the ways that some people describe an Inquisitor or something that I remember. I mean, it's been like I said, it's been a minute since I read that book too, but let's see, you got you got a little something on there.
Yeah.
Let's just show this real quick. These are a couple little sketches you can see. Scroll down a little. Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's really kind of tough because I don't think there's anything official on this guy. So there's been a lot of people, probably usually people on DeviantArt or something that have really tried to take the description of the book, you know what I mean, and draw up what they think this guy probably looks like. But again, he's another really cool character, and you don't really hear people talking about him either. Because again, he's in a book that probably not a lot of people read. To be honest, not a lot of people liked it. I remember when the book first came out, there were a lot of people that were critical of it. Now, I think it's because they were comparing it more to the old Expanded Universe books. But really, when you take it for what it is, and then in the context of all the new canon books that we have, A New Dawn is a really good book. Now, of course, everybody knows that one of my favorite all-time books is...
What depends. You got Catalyst, you got Aftermath.
Well, yeah, but...
Dark Disciple.
There you go.
Okay.
Dark Disciple. I knew you'd hit it eventually. Yeah, man. Dark Disciple is just so cool. Literally, I was crying at the end of that book.
I remember you telling me that.
Books, Star Wars books don't usually affect me that way. But I was all like wiping away tears. I mean, it's this whole, like, to see Asajj Ventress kind of like fall in love, and then, she's like torn, and I mean, it was just a really deep, penetrating type of a book, I mean, the way that it was written and everything, you get to see a little bit of Mace Windu being kind of questionable, like a little dark side-ish. Quinlan Voss, you get to know more about him because he's the object of Asajj. Like, at first, they're kind of...
At odds.
Yeah, they're at odds, and he's trying to stop her and stuff like that, but they sort of end up falling in love, and then, it was really different. It was really different than anything that I thought it would be, and yeah, I mean, it hit me. It hit me emotionally, and I did not expect that to happen. So, I mean, I highly recommend that book. And it's actually not that long of a book because it was based on an unproduced Clone Wars episode.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I think would be actually kind of cool, too, is if maybe they can squeeze in some of these unproduced Clone Wars episodes that ended up becoming books, or some of them, I think, became comics or whatever. I'd love to see some of those as episodes of the show. They could do it. They could just tell it through the Bad Batch's eyes.
True story. Ronaldo also says, do you think we will see how and when the Empire stop using clones?
Yeah, I actually think that that's going to start to be...
Yeah, I think that's going to be a big part.
Big part.
If not the first a problem the first season, maybe the second, if there's, depending,
Well,
if it's going to have a limited run or not. But
yeah, and
they
even
didn't announce it that it was going to be a limited one. So
they didn't. That's true. I mean, the way, and plus Filoni's doing it, so
yeah,
I'm thinking it's going to be kind of like Rebels and Clone Wars is going to have a long run, and I have no reason to believe that it won't be full-blown 22-episode shows. I mean, I could be wrong because, even Rebels is like, what, 4 or 5 years ago now? I mean, it's been a minute.
Yep.
So it's kind of like we're in a slightly new era here as far as television goes. And with the live action series, they might want to do a limited, maybe it's only 12 episodes or something. But up until now, I think that we can almost count on the fact that this thing is going to be a longer running series. And if it is, I think what could happen is that you will start to see, and again, this is going to be through the Bad Batch's eyes, and it's interesting because of the way that they're kind of different. They're not your usual clones. So I think that
you'll see a lot of conflict and a lot of...
Yeah, because they're going to be almost like how we are. They're looking around like, hey, man, things aren't
the same as it was.
This is a little different than what we signed up for, kind of a thing, because things are going to get more and more questionable. See, what I think is going to happen, I think Tarkin is going to, knowing these guys, and I think even in the trailer there was a line that said, oh, yeah, they don't obey orders or whatever. I think he's going to send them out on a bunch of missions that kind of keep them away from the core, so they're not really that privy to what the Empire is really doing. So they're kind of out on the outskirts, basically, doing all these little special forces type missions, and they're not really seeing a lot of the horrors and a lot of the things that you would see in the more core worlds, I would say.
I mean, that's a valid point. I mean, I think that that's something that could definitely happen. Or I can see, Tarkin kind of like almost kind of testing them all the time, where it's like, okay, if they die, cool, but if they get the mission done, cool. I mean, it's kind of like a win-win for him either way. And Tarkin's that kind of guy. He's the kind of guy that will send you to battle to lose an impossible battle. But if you win, it's something we needed done anyway. So cool. But if you die and now we can just get rid of you, we don't have to worry about you meddling in our plans and, on the goes. So.
Oh, yeah. I mean, 100%. I mean, I think that the easiest way to do that would be to just, why not? Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, why not do it that way?
Because, I mean, they already kind of love the adventure and the danger anyway. So it's like, well, cool. Like if you accomplish your mission, awesome. We'll just keep throwing you out there. And, but if you die, then it's like, well, you're expendable to us because we got all these other people that's coming in to be clones. And
well, it's one of those things that if they accomplish the mission, then they've done what they needed them to do. And if they don't, they were kind of on the fringe anyway, and they're kind of expendable, and they're kind of
like... And that's what they kind of remind me of, too.
They're danger.
The Expendables.
Yeah, actually, the Expendables is another really good analogy.
And Ronaldo even has one, which is hilarious, made me choke a little bit. The Bad Batch gave me Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle vibes the first time they appeared.
Yeah, you know what? They kind of, I'll be honest, because of their different colors, they gave me Power Ranger vibes almost.
Well, I could definitely see the Ninja Turtle thing because you had like, who was it, like Tech, who's kind of like Donatello. Then you got like Hunters like Leonardo, and Wrecker's kind of like, he's more like Raphael. He's just wants to destroy stuff. So it's hilarious.
No, that's a good point. I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see the whole tone of the show. I mean, it premieres Tuesday.
Yep.
I'm not actually sure. Is it just gonna? It's not a certain time, right? It just pops on
Disney Plus, or
kind of like whenever, midnight for the people on the West Coast and East Coast. It's like 3 a.m.
I don't know, but I'm thinking about that. Well, I'm looking that up. Did you see the May the 4th poster? And everybody's kind of up in arms about the fact that you don't see The Mandalorian or any other like the upcoming shows on the poster.
No.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
They, you don't actually see anything? Like, what do they show then? Just like the old stuff?
Yeah, it's got like, original trilogy like Han, just the whole May the 4th thing. But, of course, you got Vader and Luke and, all that stuff. But they don't have like Mandalorian, Grogu, those characters on it. So they're kind of like, hey, why aren't they on there?
Well, I mean, I think that I could actually see it from two different perspectives. So on one hand, I could see them maybe including the more classic characters simply because that's when the Force was more prominent. That's when something like May the Force be with you, which of course May the Fourth be with you is kind of like a play off of. So I can understand that being more of a thing. I mean, when you're looking at The Mandalorian, yes, you do have Ahsoka and Grogu and yeah, even Luke Skywalker at the end, but The Mandalorian really wasn't focusing on that. And then with the upcoming shows, I think with something like this poster, they actually want to do something that's a little bit more familiar, a little bit more classic, rather than necessarily confusing people. I liken it to, I don't know if you saw, did you see the new Mortal Kombat movie yet?
Yep.
So, basically then how they kind of sort of like redid the storylines of the characters a little bit and, try to make it more of a plot thing. I mean, and again, you get two people. There's some that just think it's okay, but a lot of people either really like it or love it, and then a lot of people hate it.
Right.
I didn't go into the thing thinking it was going to be some Oscar-winning performance movie.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, first of all, like, why would you even think that to begin with? Like,
but I mean, I understand though from the franchise fans' perspective, though. I don't really understand these guys that are almost like the film snob type perspective going in there. It's like, dude, you're seeing a movie called Mortal Kombat based on a video game. This isn't a like some Woody Allen film or something, or anything like that. I mean, this is kind of a fun popcorn Saturday type movie,
Right.
And I actually went to the movies to see it.
Oh, okay.
Because I've been doing that now.
Okay, sweet.
Because I got I reactivated my monthly AMC thing, so I figured, hey, why not? But I think that the way that people are reacting to that is similar to the way people react sometimes to Star Wars. You have the franchise fans who are used to certain things and they want to see things, right? So on this May the 4th poster, they want to see the current stuff that they're really getting into. And let's face it, there are some people that are actually getting into Star Wars for the first time through The Mandalorian. And then they're going back and watching maybe the original trilogy and the prequels and the sequels, and then, of course, the animated series. Which, of course, is what we would recommend anyway. Because, when people are constantly asking who these characters are, it's like, well, you got to watch this stuff. It's like, there's really no way around it. You have to watch the content.
Yeah. Although I didn't find the time as far as when it's supposed to be released, I did kind of read that it's supposed to be 14 episodes of The Bad Batch for the first season.
Okay, well, that makes sense because it's... And I think there were 24 of... or 22 of the original... Clone Wars series in season 1.
Oh, here's the
okay, scroll
poster.
up a little bit. Yeah, I see what they've done. Basically all it is that they've just taken this and they've made it a super classic poster.
Yeah, but the fact that they didn't put the sequel characters like Rey and Finn and Poe and everybody like that, but then at the same time you have you got Asajj Ventress over here, you got Ahsoka Tano here.
Yeah, I mean, looking at this thing, and I see it was tweeted out here. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you got Ahsoka. You have some of the characters. You have some. Yep, Asajj is over there.
Yeah.
So I don't really understand, what the big deal is. I mean, again, sometimes I think that even when things are going good, Star Wars fans just
you can't make
they
them
have
happy.
to complain about something. They just can't. It's like, oh no, everything's like kind of good in Star Wars right now. what could we do to ruin this whole thing?
Right.
I mean, that's just kind of the way it is. But I mean, I'm pretty much looking forward to the show, though.
Yeah, I mean, it should be cool. It should be a fun ride. I mean, I do like the characters. I can't wait to see what stories, and that's the thing I love about Filoni. He's really masterful at telling stories, especially in the animated sense, and we've definitely seen he could do it on The Mandalorian, which is live action, but, his bread and butter has always been animation.
Right.
And so what he's done with Clone Wars, Rebels, and the Bad Batch, once again, it's a continuation, and, I'm just anxious to see his vision.
Well, let me ask this. We have clear your mind questions today?
Oh, no, we don't.
Ah, okay. So we don't have any clear your mind questions. So you don't get to clear your minds. So basically what I want to do then is let's basically wrap up tonight's show by give me 3 things that you are most looking forward to in the Bad Batch when it premieres this Tuesday.
Okay, so the thing I want to see where we are in the galaxy, like what time period are we in? Like how far into or post are we, like directly after Revenge of the Sith, or are we a little bit, in, like past that mark? I want to see who's actually leading them. So I want to see like, the Tarkin and kind of the overall plot, and I'm gonna see if we get maybe we get a shot of Vader.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see the whole Vader thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That
Especially
would almost
with it being 70 minutes. I mean, that's a long.
Well,
it's
my
not real
thing
long, but
is,
it's like,
if there's only like maybe 14 episodes of this thing, I'm thinking that Vader is either going to be in the first episode.
mm-hmm.
I guess it would be the pilot, simply because of the length of it.
Right.
I mean, you're coming up on feature length at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe somewhere toward the end or something. I don't think that Vader's going to play a super prominent role. I think we're looking at a Rogue One style Vader appearance here.
Okay.
So he would actually be kind of in my honorable mention. I mean, some of them, I think the 3 things that I'm the most looking forward to when it comes to this show are probably, 1, I want to see basically how it's transitioning from 3 to 4, from episode 3 to episode 4. I want to see how that is going to take place, because again, this is something we've never actually seen in any kind of a whether it's animation or live action, other than books. We've basically through books have had it described to us, but we've never actually seen it.
Right.
And I think that this is something that could be a really strong thing that they can do, because we're also seeing it. It also depends on what eyes you're seeing it through. See, because if you did this through 3PO and R2, it would be a different thing. If you did this through, say, like Padme or something, well, I mean, you couldn't really because she's not there anymore. But, maybe like Bail Organa or Mon Mothma or something, it would be kind of a different thing. But seeing it through the Bad Batch's eyes, I think is going to make for some really compelling storylines. And that's one of the things that I'm really looking forward to seeing, is their reaction to what's going on around them, because I have a feeling it's going to mirror what the audience is supposed to feel.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bad Batch they kind of represent us in a way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can definitely.
They're surrogates for the audience, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing that I would say that I'm probably looking forward to the most is, again, it's a Tarkin thing, because I want to see how Tarkin all of a sudden now seems to be like, Tarkin is to the Bad Batch what Charlie was to Charlie's Angels. Like he's almost giving them their missions or something. I mean, it's kind of like I really want to check out and see, how that's going to play out, because unless he is a little different, I don't know. I just can't see that working out. So I really want to see the direction and the writing and the plot. I mean, and then, of course, the third thing, which really honestly could have been number 1. I mean, this could have almost been a top 3, and maybe I start with 3, and now I'm at number 1. Because the thing that I am most looking forward to is I want to see how Fennec Shan in particular is going to actually play into this, and Saw Gerrera and Hondo and maybe some of these other people, because I'm really curious on how they're going to introduce these characters, how they're going to, maybe have them be a part of the plot without necessarily taking over the show. Because any of these people that we mentioned tonight, I don't think are going to suddenly take over.
Yeah.
I don't think like Boba Fett's going to come in, for instance, and completely take over, like 3 episodes or something.
No. But speaking of the episodes, I do have some more information for everybody. So, on the name of the episodes, Aftermath, will air on Tuesday, May 4th, with Cut and Run airing Friday, May 7th. And then after that, Replacements will air on May 14th, and then it will show every Friday after that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So, May the 4th, May 7th, May 14th, and then after that, every Friday after that.
Okay.
So
it's going to be a weekly, and again, I mean, I kind of figured that anyway, because I don't think this is going to be, Star Wars is not known for its binge watching type shows.
Right, yeah, they want to keep you in suspense.
Yeah, they want to keep you in suspense. They want to keep you going. All right, so do we have any more chats?
Let's see. Ronaldo says they're Tarkin's angels. And then
Tarkin's Angels.
He also says, I want to see a series with that title. Tarkin's Angels.
Tarkin's Angels. Now, see, that would actually be hilarious.
Yeah.
And what would really be funny is if they had Tarkin's Angels and it was like, Asajj Ventress and the female
Ahsoka.
Inquisitor. Yeah, I mean, it would basically be like the Empire version of Charlie's Angels or something like that. That would actually be kind of funny. I could actually see that being something that would be somewhat hilarious.
True.
But I mean, hey, on that note, remember that The Bad Batch does premiere this coming Tuesday on May the 4th at 8 p.m. And so, you're going to want to definitely watch that. And I'm sure what would really be interesting, obviously we won't be doing this Monday. I'm not really sure what we're going to talk about this Monday.
But, yeah, definitely after that.
But after that, we should probably make our Monday show the review
of The Bad Batch. And especially since it airs on Fridays,
Yeah, we'll have some time to
digest it.
Digest it and be able to talk about it. So, you can look forward to our Bad Batch reviews starting, like May the 10th, I guess. So be sure to check that out, because we'll be talking about, I'm sure we'll be talking about the first episode, depending on if we see it by next, we'll see it Tuesday. You said another one's going to be on Friday, right?
Yeah, so it's May the 4th, May 7th. That's the Friday.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, that should be cool. So you're definitely going to want to check us out. We don't really know what we're going to talk about Monday, but you're not going to want to miss it. And, of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. When you guys subscribe, it really helps us out. And, of course, you don't want to miss this content. I mean, we got a lot of stuff coming up. We're going to do some more review shows and more things like that. We're live every Monday and every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, so you can come in, you can chat with us. Be sure to like the video. Be sure to hit that notification bell so you know when we're coming out with some new stuff. And, of course, again, be sure to join us this coming Monday at 8 o'clock, where we're going to have some more Star Wars discussion for you guys. So with that, I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.